About that unpublished transcript, the president said it's not true. The Attorney General has come out today and said specifically it's not true. This is why you do fulsome investigations over in the House before you dump this on the doorstep of the United States Senate. They didn't do that. The Senate can't fix this. This was a process that was broken and corrupted all the way along. The president was deprived of due process all the way along. This thing fails in every respect. And again, no single witness is going to change that.
You're taking on the process. On substance, though, are you saying you don't believe John Bolton?
Actually, we haven't heard from John Bolton.
But do you want to? You could. He wants to.
They haven't denied the authenticity of the manuscript.
So here's the thing: is the facts don't change. Even, at this particular point, what we've heard is from about a manuscript, and I can tell you, we've seen this before. The whistleblower. All of you remember the whistleblower complaint? A number of false allegations in the whistleblower complaint that have been totally rebuked and debunked by a real testimony. And when we start to hear this, to suggest that any more witnesses are going to provide clarity, there are no witnesses that can provide any more clarity other than the President of the United States, President Zelensky, the Vice President of the United States, and the Foreign Minister of Ukraine. All four of them say that there was no pressure, there was no conditionality, there were no deliverables, and so to suggest that anybody else has any facts that will change those underlying facts is just not credible.
But Congressman, sir, why wouldn't he be relevant, sir? Congressman, some of your colleagues in the Senate on the Republican side say he would be a relevant witness. Why not?
Well, let me tell you about the process in the House side. We went through 18 closed-door depositions with leaks taken out of context, with facts that have been debunked as we've heard and as the depositions have been released. This is nothing new. This is part of the Democrats' playbook. And Adam Schiff had an opportunity. He subpoenaed John Bolton and then withdrew that subpoena. If this testimony was so important, it should have been part of the House process. Adam Schiff chose not to get all the facts. And the most important facts remain the same, in that Ukraine received the aid and there was no conditionality because there was no investigations into the Biden. Regardless of any of the other news stories, those facts remain the same.
So Bolton's act turns out to be true. Are you okay with it as presented in the report? Are you okay with the allegations that he has laid out then?
The question that stands before our senators today is the case that the Democrats are bringing forward. Does any of the evidence rise to impeachable offenses? And the answer to that is no. Not a single witness who has testified has said that there is any direct evidence of impeachable offenses, high crimes, misdemeanor, bribery, or treason.
But some of your Republican colleagues seem to think that this is changing the Republican calculus, that there is increasing pressure. Do you believe, are you resigned to the fact that there may now be witnesses?
I would just say someone telling the New York Times what John Bolton's draft manuscript supposedly says doesn't change the underlying facts, doesn't change those four key facts we've been talking about all along. And just because they bring it up at the last minute, they tried the same darn thing in the House. Remember, Ambassador Taylor had talked to David Holmes about his conversation that he overheard between Mr. Sondland and the President of the United States. But Ambassador Taylor was their star witness. He never brought it up. But suddenly David Holmes is brought in the last week with, I overheard this conversation at a restaurant in Kyiv, and suddenly that's supposed to be, that doesn't change the underlying facts. Just like someone telling the New York Times that they think the draft manuscript of John Bolton's book says something, that doesn't change anything. So let's get on with this. The American people want us to get on with this and get it over with so we can get back to the work for them.
This could really extend the timeline, Congressman. This could really extend the timeline, sir.
And the investigations weren't linked. Bolton is saying they were linked. Why wouldn't you want to hear the New York Times?
Someone told the New York Times.
Bolton does not testify.
See what he has to say?
As I think Mr. Ratcliffe and Ms. Stefanik pointed out, Adam Schiff should have done that on the House side, for goodness sake.
Which brings up an important point. Everyone needs to just take a deep breath and remember one thing. In our constitutional system, the Senate has one important job first. This is what the defense team is going to present today and explain very clearly. They have to first answer a threshold question before you get to witnesses and documents and all this other stuff. The Senate has to determine whether the articles that were sent over by the House are valid and legitimate on their face. Are these valid articles of impeachment? Abuse of power and obstruction of Congress do not meet the constitutional threshold, and the Senate has to answer that question objectively the right way. When they do, if and when they do, all of the rest of this is a moot point. The House did not do its job. Adam Schiff did not call the witnesses that apparently he thinks he now needed, and it's too late. The House sent over invalid articles, and the Senate, I think, will find that, and it will dispense with a lot of these superfluous questions.
If the president did tie this security assistance to pressure Ukraine to investigate Biden, that's okay.
He did not, because the aid was released to Ukraine and there was no investigation.
But
and the president has said that he did not tie. There was no conditionality. Gordon Sondland, in fact, testified, and we saw that played out as the president's defense team made the case that it was presumption, assumption, and guesswork. So the facts of this case remain the same in that we have more security assistance for Ukraine, much more than during the Obama administration, and there was, in fact, no investigation into the Bidens.
But
and the administration,
what do you have
to lose?
This was Adam Schiff's choice. Adam Schiff is clearly scared that his case is so weak. Adam Schiff made the decision to withdraw the subpoena. This is an unfair, unconstitutional, and half-baked set of impeachment articles that was sent over to the Senate.
It's been very interesting here to hear this. And you talk about relevance. Let's go back to something here. One, it's interesting to hear the question and say, well, if John Bolton said it, it must be true. Even though the president said it didn't happen, Barr said it didn't happen. We don't take that. And the interesting issue here is these were all known by Adam Schiff when he started that he had his witness. You talk about relevancy. I have a question for you. Why wouldn't Adam Schiff be relevant as a witness when him and his staff met with the whistleblower before it became public? They wanted the whistleblower out there, but when it became public that he meddled or his staff had actually had contact, then there's a relevancy issue. But here's what they didn't do it. What they wanted to do was on a clock and a calendar in the House. And you can make all the arguments now that you think they should be done in the Senate right now. But go back, because I've heard a lot of you talk about Clinton and I've heard you talk about Nixon. In Clinton, there was almost 3 years of a Starr report in which everything was aired in grand jury, which the White House was all involved in. There was nothing there except when the Starr report was then issued to the House then had their hearings, and they went forward from there. In this case, we've had 78 days, as Mr. Ratcliffe pointed out, 71 of which were never even involved with the president. But it is interesting to me today that now to say that these are relevant witnesses, where was the call for relevant witnesses when Adam Schiff was holding his underground hearings and not going forward? So again, the premise of your question is that Bolton undoubtedly must be right. The president undoubtedly must be wrong. We've proved that wrong over and over again, and the president's team is going to do that again today.
Well, respectfully, Congressman, it's the Senate Republicans who say they're relevant, sir. It's not.
Thank you, guys. I'll let you talk to Senate Republicans.
And there we go. House Republicans speaking to reporters as we are getting ready, just a half an hour away from President Trump defense